Human Resources because I love working for the state of Maine. But again, my name is Karen Butterfield, and I've been with the Bureau of Human Resources for coming up on 13 years in several different capacities. So I'm pretty familiar with how our division was set up. But overall, the Bureau of Human Resources is responsible for the centralized management of human resource policy, for compliance, for civil service laws and rules, for classification of jobs, for determination of compensation. And the talent management division, the division the three of us work in, is also housed within the Bureau of Human Resources. And our division is responsible for the recruitment, retention, and development of our state workforce. Our team implements strategy for this, and we support our agencies that work out within the departments. Our HR folks in the departments, we support them in all of these kinds of initiatives. So our role is really more centralized than it is directly with state employees. We are more of a support really to our HR folks. We do work with state employees as well, but not as often. So about 3 years ago, the Bureau of Human Resources decided that it was going to be really important for us to focus in on our recruitment efforts. We had started receiving a lot of complaints from our departments about the number of candidates that they received, some of the quality of candidates. They would see a lot of the same people over and over who weren't quite qualified for the jobs that they were posting. So we said, you know what, we really need to take a look at this and start figuring out a way to do this better. The HR director at the time wanted to find somebody from the outside of state government who had an understanding of the recruitment industry, because it is in fact a full industry. And that's when we found Jess. And Jess came to us about 2.5 years ago to help the Bureau establish this recruitment strategy and really dig into our process. Our application at that time was a 9-page paper application process, and it was long, and it took a long time for our HR folks to review those applications. It took a long time for them to get back to people, if they got back to them at all. And again, it was just a very manual process. We often heard it described as clunky, and it was. So Jess's the first thing Jess did when she started working for the Bureau was to update that application. And we did go from a 9-page application to a 1-page application. It was front and back, but it was 1 page. So we were pretty proud of that, and we used that for a little while until we were able to implement an automated system. We did implement Recruiter Box, which is out there now, and this way candidates can apply online. All candidates for all jobs can apply online. We also do still have a paper application, so if anybody ever needed a paper application because they had trouble applying or just don't have access or something like that, we certainly can accommodate applying for state jobs in other ways. But the implementation of our Recruiter Box system was extremely successful. Our applicant pool increased by something like 500% overnight. It was crazy how many more applicants we had, and the quality of applicants also increased. We cast a wider net basically when we implemented this system. We were able to recruit from further reaches by advertising more easily on places like Indeed and other job sites. So that's the brief history. I'm keeping it brief. So I will turn this over to Megan, and I will talk with you all again in just a minute.
So State of Maine jobs are posted in several places. They're all posted on our careers page, which is maine.gov/BHR/state-jobs. We'll show you what this looks like a little bit later on in the presentation. And the Bureau of Human Resources is active on 4 social media platforms. On Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter, our username is @MaineBHR, and on LinkedIn, it's the State of Maine. Someone in your network may find our content useful, so please share our posts on your pages. And depending on the opening, some jobs may be posted to specific job boards or in local papers. We utilize these tools to promote our positions to a specialized audience or geographic region. And back to Karen to talk about job anatomy.
The job anatomy, it's not as gross as it sounds. So what we'll take a look at are the bulletins, which is our job advertisement. We'll talk a little bit about the minimum qualifications that are advertised on our bulletins. And also I want to mention some information about employment registers and what they are. So first, the job bulletin. When you look at our job bulletins that are on our career site, any of the jobs that are posted, you click on it, you'll open it and you'll see this job bulletin. Right at the top, you'll see the job title, the salary range, there's some open and close dates, and then you'll see our job description. Sometimes it has some information about the agency and what the job entails. You'll also see what we call KSAs, which are all these little bullet points that you see in front of you. These are knowledge, skills, and abilities that you need in order to do the job. Some knowledge, skills, and abilities would be learned on the job, but a lot of them, we do look for some of those things when you're hired to have those skills. So it's important to read these job bulletins, because when you're crafting your resume, and Jess is going to talk a little bit more about customizing the resume to a job bulletin in just a few minutes, but when you're looking at the job bulletin and you're customizing your resume, you're going to want to make sure you highlight some of these knowledge, skills, and abilities, if you have them, to call attention to them. I think that it's really important to do that. When you have all of your jobs listed out, put that bullet point that you saw on the job bulletin first, so that they say, oh great, they have that skill. The other important thing are the minimum qualifications. And the minimum qualifications are important because this is how we screen all applicants in state government. So all of our HR folks are going to, they are very familiar with the minimum qualifications for all of the jobs, and HR is generally the group that will look at any application before it goes on to a hiring manager. So we screen applicants to verify whether or not they have these minimum qualifications. And if you don't have the qualifications, you likely would not move forward in the hiring process. There is something called preference. And so if you see on a job bulletin where it says preferences will be given to, you'll see on this example right down at the bottom, preferences will be given to people with an education or experience or some special skill, who's really great in Access databases or Excel or something like that. Sometimes they put those on bulletins. When you see that, really pay attention to that, because that's really another tool that they're using to screen people. They may get 60 applicants and they're not going to be able to, let's say all 60 of them meet the minimum qualification. There's no way they can have a efficient recruitment process and interview 60 people. So they're going to have to narrow it down even further. So that's why it's really important, if you have that special skill, call attention to it. Put it in the resume, put it in your cover letter. It's definitely worth the time to make sure that you do that. The last thing I want to talk about are the corrections employment registers. On our job page, you'll notice right at the top of the job page, there's a little star corrections employment registers, and it should always be on top of the page. And what these are, we have about 15 job classifications that have to be recruited this way. And what we do is the Bureau of Human Resources manages these particular recruitments, and we establish a register of qualified applicants. So that means if you apply for the job, you're qualified, I put your name on a register, a list of other people, and when the agency has an opening, they will request that list of names to set up interviews. And the reason that we do this is because these are critical positions within the Department of Corrections facilities. So we tend to accept applications for these job openings on an ongoing basis so that we can help the Department of Corrections fill them as quickly as possible when they do have a vacancy. With that said, that means that when you apply for those jobs, your name may sit on the list for a while before you hear from the Department of Corrections to actually set up an interview, because it's based on when they have an opening. We just like to have it ready to go for as soon as they have an opening, we can send them names. So that's what that's about. And if you ever had any questions about the employment registers, or you're interested in getting on one of those employment registers and you have some more questions about it, please feel free to reach out to myself, to Karen Butterfield, and I can help you, I can walk you through that process. Perfect. And that is it.
Thank you, Karen.
You're welcome.
So next we are going to dive into our application demonstration. We have a recording of Megan actually walking through and applying for a job. So we'll take you step by step what it looks like to apply for a job online. As Karen mentioned, online is really one of the faster ways to apply for jobs with the state of Maine, and it's probably how we receive the majority of applications. There is, however, still a paper application, and we will absolutely accept applications from candidates who wish to fill out paper applications. The easiest way to access a paper application is you can reach out to one of us, and we'll provide our contact information at the end. But most, if not all, job advertisements for the state of Maine will have a human resources contact person on the job description. And so you can reach out to them for a paper application or with any questions you may have about the job itself. Of particular note, I think in our demonstration, Megan's going to show where to select the veterans preference in hiring when filling out the application, and how to upload a DD-214 or a DD-1300, because documentation is required if you're selecting the veterans preference. And then the last piece, I alluded to this a moment ago, each bulletin should have contact information for someone in human resources, or it should have a hiring manager's contact information. So a few things about that. One, if you have questions on the job, please make sure to reach out to those individuals. As Karen showed us when talking about the bulletin, there's an open and close date to all of our jobs. So just make sure you reach out with your questions during that period before the close date. It's always good to write down the contact information of the hiring manager or HR person. That way, if any questions come up or you don't hear from them, you'll have somebody to reach out to at any point. However, if you've applied for a job, you're not hearing back, or you have questions, please feel free to reach out to one of the three of us. We may not know the specifics of the job as closely as the hiring manager or the HR person supporting that particular job would, but we work very closely with our HR counterparts, so we can reach out to them for you. So let's dive into our application demo.
All right, we are going to walk through applying for a job with the state of Maine. We have two different locations where you can find all of the positions that are currently recruiting. One is this one right in front of us, which is mainebhr.recruiterbox.com, which looks like this. And the other one is on the Bureau of Human Resources website, which is maine.gov/bhr/state-jobs, which you can find if you go to our homepage, and then under the State Jobs tab, click on State Jobs. So the one on our website right here, you can see all of the different jobs by department, by their own career page. So if you're specifically interested in what a department is doing and what they might have available, you can look there. You can scroll through all of our open positions right now. You can search. You're looking for a specific position. Maybe you're interested in something that's in Augusta. Most of our positions are in Augusta, so a lot are going to pop up. But you can see all of these, or if you're looking for a keyword, perhaps you want to work in transportation, So now you don't even have to hit enter. All you have to do is just start typing and it filters as you type. So these are the two positions that are open right now in transportation. If you're interested in learning about the compensation and benefits for state employees or anything more about how we do our hiring, this is where you'll find that information. Now, for the specific application, learning how to apply, I created this position specifically for this demonstration. So you'll see the name of the job, you will see the location of the job, the area that it's in, and when the job closes. So this is the last day that applications are accepted. If you keep scrolling down, you'll see more information about the job. For instance, it'll have information about the responsibilities. We'll include information about our benefits and the minimum qualifications, which Karen discussed earlier, and also application instructions. So today, I'm going to be showing you how to apply online, but if you do require a paper application, feel free to contact Human Resources at 623-6700. Now, so you're going to come down to the bottom and click on this apply button, or you can scroll back up to the top and click that apply button. Either work. It'll take you to the application form where you're going to fill out the required information. Pardon me while I just type all this out. You're going to provide your name, first and last, your address, your email, your phone number, and then you're going to want to upload your resume. So here is my resume and a cover letter. And then there are some questions that we'll need to answer. So I'm going to say, yes, I am a current or former employee of the state of Maine. I am at least 18 years of age, do have a valid driver's license, it's issued in Maine. I believe it's Class C. List your geographical location preference. So I am local to this area. So for candidates who upload a resume, if your resume does not have the month and year of employment listed, please list the company name, job title, and the month and year you started and ended your 3 most recent jobs. This is necessary for the assessment of qualifications. I believe my resume does include all of this information, so I'm going to skip this if it lets me. But if your resume does not include this information, please make sure that you fill out that field. Now, veterans preference. Maine law provides a preference to qualified veterans and Gold Star spouses by ensuring that they are offered an interview. If you are a veteran or Gold Star spouse and wish to take advantage of this preference, please indicate by clicking the appropriate box below. Documentation is required, and if you want more information, you can find it here using this link. So I'm going to select veteran here, and I will upload a DD 214. I'm currently authorized to work in the United States. How did you hear about this job opportunity? I'm going to say career fair, if similar to the veterans preference up here, there's also a disability preference. So you can select that if that applies to you. For more information, visit this website. So before you submit your application, the state of Maine requires you read and accept the terms and conditions associated with the application process, located at that link. Please type your name below and confirm that you are agreeing to the terms and conditions. Applications without a printed name in the box below are considered invalid and will not be processed. So make sure that you remember to sign your name here. And then I'm going to hit submit. So my application has been submitted successfully. This is what this is going to look like. And then you can go through and answer the demographic questions. Or you can skip it if you want to. Thank you for helping us fill this out. And now you've submitted your application. Congratulations.
Excellent. Thank you, Megan, for the demonstration. So as you might have noticed, the entire time from reviewing the job description to Megan submitting her application took maybe 10 minutes at most. So it's a very fast process and quite a difference from the 9-page paper application that Karen mentioned from just a few years ago. So it should be much easier for our applicants to apply. We want to encourage people to apply for jobs in state government. Part of Megan's demonstration showed all the departments in state government. Many of them, this is the Bureau of Human Resources career page where all careers in state government are shown, but each department, or many of them, have their own career pages specific to their openings. And it really runs from, you know, accounting and administrative positions to working in transportation, marine resources, social workers. So there's a lot of career opportunities within the state of Maine. I think there's 1,000 different classifications, and then, you know, hundreds of positions within those classifications. So there's a little bit of something for everyone, I think. So with our application process, as has been mentioned before, and you probably noticed on the job bulletin, there's a 2-week period where most jobs in state government are going to be open for recruitment. That, just to give you some idea, is due to our contracts, our bargaining unit agreements with the unions. So we do have to post our jobs for 10 business days. So once you fill out your application, you should receive, as you may have noticed, some kind of notification either on the screen or an email saying that we received your application and it will be reviewed. What will happen at the end of that 10-day advertising period, HR will actually screen for minimum qualifications, and Karen referred to this earlier. So they're the ones that will look at their pool of applicants, determine who meets the qualifications, and then they will give those applicants to the hiring team, the hiring managers. And in general, the hiring managers will be the ones to set up interviews. Some departments may do things slightly differently, but in general, that's how the process will work. The hiring managers will be the ones to reach out and schedule their interview. It could be a single interview process. Depending on the number of candidates, there could be 2 interviews with candidates. It depends on a lot of factors, the number of applicants, the type of position. So it varies quite a bit. The next piece, and Karen made a clarification in the chat. I wanted to mention HR sets up the job posting, so they add the fields for additional information. Thank you, Karen. That's a good point.
The question was about how do you add additional information to the job, to the application. And so basically, anytime you have if the agency is requesting for transcripts, or they have some supplemental questions they ask or something like that, HR will actually dedicate a field in Recruiter Box that says, upload your transcripts here, and then they can have then you would upload it right there. So they can customize the application in that way. So if they're asking for it, then then they should have a field for it. If you find they don't, contact them right away and let them know, because it may have just been, they may have just missed it, but they can add that field anytime they ask for additional information. And adding, if you have a lot of extra information to add, really go back to the bulletin and read what they're asking for, because more is not always better. More is just more, and they may not need all of that information. Really look at the bulletin to see what they're asking for, so that you upload the information that they need in order to assess your qualifications, because that's what the application process is. It's assessing qualifications. The interview is where you're going to bring all of that extra stuff. They don't necessarily need it in the screening process.
That's a great point, Karen. Thank you. And it actually reminds me, I wanted to mention back at our apply stage, you may have noticed that Megan attached a copy of her resume when she was applying. There is a link in that particular question on every application. So if you do not have a resume, you can actually click on a link and it will bring you to a page where you can fill out your employment history, and then you can attach that form to the application. At the same time, we would encourage you to work with your local career centers and veterans representatives on creating a resume if you don't have one put together yet, because they can certainly help you with that piece if you'd like to make one. So back to our last step, once the interview process has been completed, is the hire piece. So there's typically a phone call made and a physical letter or email sent out once somebody is selected for a job. The entire time it takes from when you submit your application to hire is going to vary. And I know that's not a very fair answer, but it's going to depend on the number of applications. It will depend on the type of job. I mentioned that there may be 1 to 2 interviews. It could even depend on the schedule of the hiring team, because typically we have at least 2 people, more often 3, on our hiring panels. So depending on their schedules, it can be complicated to get them all in the room to meet with people in a timely manner. So we understand that it can be frustrating, especially if you apply on the first day for a job, to wait weeks. So please don't hesitate to reach out to one of the 3 of us or HR if you've applied and you haven't heard anything back and it's been a little while. We do want to respect our applicants' time and make sure that we're getting back to everybody in a timely manner. So yeah, I think that's kind of an overview of our timeline there. So we have a few tips we wanted to share for a successful job search, and these apply, I think, to state government, but also just general job search tips. So one piece Karen talked a little bit about earlier is with your resume. I think the conventional wisdom is that you're going to tailor your cover letter to each job that you're applying for. You're going to make it specific to the job. In some ways, you're going to want to do that with your resume as well. And the reason, and Karen talked about this a bit, is because there are going to be keywords in a job description that you're going to want to make sure are present on your resume. So make sure if you read the minimum qualifications and you're like, I know I meet the minimum qualifications for the job, that you make sure some of those keywords stand out on your resume, that it's very apparent to HR and the hiring managers how you meet those minimum qualifications and where. So it may be just tweaking your resume a bit each time you go to submit it to a position. So to give you an example, I wear a lot of hats in my current role as talent management director. And one of the pieces of my job currently is helping with a change management project. So if I'm applying to change management jobs, I'm going to make sure that that piece is a little bit higher up on my list of duties when I'm describing my current role than if I was applying to a director of recruitment or something like that. Then I'm going to make sure my recruiting responsibilities are a little bit more apparent on that piece of the resume. So just make sure that you're you're selling yourself using your resume and meeting some of those keywords. And then the same in a cover letter. This is where you get to kind of shine a little bit. And Megan's going to share an example of as she will say, infamous cover letter that she wrote when she applied for her job in state government. But this is where you get to stand out. So the resume shows your skills, your abilities, and the cover letter gives you a little bit of the personality behind your skills and abilities. So it's telling the hiring team why you're interested in the job, why you feel you'd be a good fit. And this is where you can stand out from everybody else. Megan, did you want to share your cover letter?
Yeah. Yeah, like Jess was saying, this has a little bit of infamy around our office because of the impression that it made. I mean, we're still talking about it months later. And the hiring manager actually copied the format that I used when she emailed me to offer me an interview. So I think that really says something. So the first paragraph of my cover letter was 867. That's the number of new Girl Scout members I recruited throughout the last year, 9% above my professional goal. I'm excited to explore the opportunity of putting my recruitment experience, sales training, and marketing passion to use as a marketing and recruitment specialist with the Bureau of Human Resources. I think it's important to note that I think sometimes fall into the trap of this is what a cover letter should look like. And if everyone does that, they're all going to look the same. And so you want to make an impression. You're never going to bore someone into hiring you. And Karen, did you want to add anything? Since you
did.
Work hiring?
I'm sorry, I was listening, but I was also answering questions that were coming in. Yes, I was on the hiring panel when we received Megan's cover letter and resume, and we actually only we had quite a few applicants and ended up interviewing 4 people, I think, for the job, just really the standouts. So anyway, when we saw her cover letter, it really grabbed our attention. I read a lot of cover letters because I manage the employment registers, so I see a lot of cover letters, and most of them are canned cover letters. I'll admit, even my own cover letter, which I keep up to date all the time, Jess, you can turn off your ears right now when I say that, because you just never know. I always keep my resume up to date. I always keep a cover letter up to date, just because you never know when an opportunity is going to come your way. I love my job, don't get me wrong, I love it. But I've always felt that it's really important to keep that information up to date. But and my canned cover letter is canned. I mean, it's really boring and dull. And I read Megan's, I was like, oh, I need to change mine. This is so good. So it really does grab your attention, and it really does make a difference. It can make the difference in being interviewed and not being interviewed.
Wonderful, thank you for sharing. The last piece we were going to talk about are the supplemental materials, and actually Karen talked about this a little bit already, but some jobs may require you to upload a copy of your transcript or other documentation, and those should be, if it's indicated in the job bulletin that you're going to need to submit something, there should be a field within the application that's added for you to be able to do so, and please contact Human Resources if that's not the case. Because we want to make sure we get all of your application materials to be able to qualify our applicants. Some examples of this may be if you're applying for like a social work position, they may look for like some kind of certification or licensure. So that's an example of one. Some jobs may require like a writing sample. So those are some of the examples of what might be a supplemental material that's asked for. I will share that please make sure that when you are attaching documents, that you are selecting the right documents when you're applying. And I say this because we have received applications that send us incorrect forms. We've received tax forms before and things that I'm sure people did not mean to submit. And so it can delay the qualifying process, and it could rule someone out as a candidate if they're not submitting the correct documents. So we want to make sure, when you're saving documents maybe on your desktop, label it as resume, cover letter, transcript, so that you're grabbing the correct forms when you're uploading them.
Definitely good advice. We've absolutely seen some documentation we kind of wish we never had. So sometimes you can't unsee things.
So with our current world, where a lot of us are, the three of us, you may have noticed, are working remotely, there are many interviews in departments across state government that are being hosted via either Zoom or Microsoft Teams. So it is an adjustment. I will share with you, I've been in recruitment for 10 years now, and have done a lot of interviews in that time. And I recently was on a hiring panel, and we used Zoom and Teams. It is different. It is different for the interviewer. It's different for the interviewee. So my suggestion would be, if you're new to the technology, make sure and you're asked to interview using Zoom or Teams, make sure you do a little time practicing. Maybe go to a career center or call them ahead of time and see if they have any tips. Make sure you download the technology. And you could even practice if you get Zoom on your computer, and you have a friend or family member who could practice with you. You could do a Zoom call and practice answering questions virtually, because you still see people. We encourage cameras to be on during remote interviews. It helps with body language. It's not the same as in person, but it's easier than just hearing someone's voice and not being able to see them. So we do, and that way you can dress up for an in-person interview, and they can see you representing yourself in the best way. The other piece I wanted to mention is be yourself in your interviews. I think that comes across when people, aren't trying to be someone other than who they are. So make sure you're just representing yourself in a genuine fashion in your interviews. And Karen and Megan, I don't know if you had any additional pieces you'd like to add on either the technology or be yourself.
I'm sorry, I'm trying to answer a question and I can't spell a word.
That's okay. We can move to the next slide. Perfect. So post-interview, I think it was common, and I think it still is, to send thank you letters after an interview. It's becoming more and more common to send thank you emails, and I think that's completely fine. I don't think you have to send a physical letter. I think you can certainly send an email, especially when we're, all practicing social distancing and things like that. It is a nice touch. Again, I was on this hiring panel recently, and it was really nice to hear from applicants afterwards, to hear just a little bit of a thank you. So it does go a long way. And then the last piece we wanted to talk about is be kind to yourselves. I had 60 applicants for this recent position that we hired for. We had an amazing pool of applicants, really great skill sets and experiences, and it was a very difficult decision to make. But in the end, 59 people ended up not getting that job. That doesn't mean they weren't excellent applicants with great skill sets. So the point we wanted to make with this is, be kind to yourself if you end up not being selected for a position. There is a good fit job out there for everybody. And so it just might be that, the one or two that you apply to at first you aren't selected for, but you doesn't mean you don't have a skill set that's not valuable, and that there isn't a position for you within state government.
I just also wanted to add that a rejected opportunity now may actually be pointing you towards the perfect position for you in the future.
It's true.
Great point, Megan. Thank you. So if you would like to stay up to date on career opportunities with Maine state government, you would want to visit this website, mainebhr.recruiterbox.com. You can enter your email address, and then you'll receive, I believe it's weekly emails with a list of the current careers open on our website, the BHR career page. You're also more than welcome, if you prefer not to. I know people get a lot of emails, so you can also visit our website and that web page on a weekly basis, just to see what's new, what new opportunities there are. Megan also does a fantastic job keeping our social media up to date. Not all state jobs will be listed there, but a number of them are.
And if you want to connect with us, on social media. I'll just mention our handles again. It's at Maine VHR on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. And on LinkedIn, it is State of Maine.
And this is our contact information. We'll go to the next slide, I think, which is our questions and answers page, but we can leave up this contact slide during our discussion at the end so that you can write down our phone number and email address. Email is probably the best way to reach the three of us right now because we are working remotely, but you're more than welcome if you prefer to call. You can call, ask to speak with one of us, and you'll be patched through to us. I would suggest if you call, asking for myself or Karen so that we can speak with you over the phone.
Yeah, and you'll probably be put into our voicemail. Please leave a message. We both have our voicemail being forwarded to our email, so we'll be able to hear your voicemail, and then we'll give you a call back.
Perfect. And I know the chat has been busy.
It has. I do have something I want to talk about that came up in chat.
That would be perfect.
Okay. One of the questions was about, is there a disability preference for veterans, like an additional disability preference? And I wanted to talk about the difference between our disability preference and the veterans preference and what they mean. So the veterans preference will guarantee any, that was the word I was having trouble spelling for some reason. I'm just like, why can't I spell guarantee today? So the veterans preference will guarantee any veteran who meets the minimum qualifications, they will get an interview. The disability preference works the same way, but it doesn't give you any additional preference because the preference is a guaranteed interview if you meet minimum qualifications. Now, in the past, there was a point in time where we actually scored applications and we gave points, and then we gave additional points to veterans, and the law changed. So when the law changed, we also changed the way the preference was given. So there's no longer extra points, and that's why there's not an additional preference for a disability, because the guarantee is the interview. There's not any scoring mechanism in place. So I just wanted to kind of clarify that a little bit more in case there were some more questions around that. And it was kind of long to try to type that out. So Jess, do you have any to add? Anything to add
No,
to
I
that?
think you spelled that out really well, that it's two separate preferences. And if you qualify for the job and you select the veterans preference, if you would like to fill out the disability preference, please feel free to do so, but you would still meet the qualifications and be offered an interview based on your selection of the veterans preference. So, correct. Karen, were there any other questions in the chat that might be good for the whole group to discuss, or?
Well, all of them were public, so all the questions were asked publicly. We discussed already the information about uploading additional information to the application, and then we discussed our preference. There was one question that I'll bring to everyone's attention about how will you know if a candidate has been hired and the position has been filled? And my answer was we coach our HR folks to make sure that they're contacting everyone when they apply for the job. If they are not moving forward in the application process, we ask them to notify them. If you are moving forward in the to the interview stage, then you would be contacted by the hiring manager to have an interview scheduled. And then after the interview, we ask that HR or the hiring manager, some agencies will have the hiring manager do this, but we ask at least HR to make sure that everybody has been contacted who was not selected, to make sure that they know. Now, we wouldn't necessarily say, yes, this is the candidate we hired. We don't publicize that. So I'm not sure if that was the question. There are also times when they decide not to fill a position. They'll go through the full interview process and say, oh, we're not going to fill this at this time. And that's for various reasons. It could be just based on the interviews. They didn't quite find the right fit that they were looking for. But it could also mean that they're curtailing budget and they decided we can't fill this, we can't afford to fill this position at the time. That does happen. It is a very realistic thing. So I wanted to call that one out just in case, Jess, you had anything else to add to that.
No, I think you covered it well. I would hope again that if you don't hear back in a timely manner, if you've interviewed and you're waiting, to contact the HR person for that particular opening, or to contact one of us so that we can work on getting an answer for you. Because as Karen mentioned, our HR teams really do want to make sure they're communicating with all applicants. We understand that, you know, it's a courtesy that we need to be offering to our applicants to make sure we're getting back to them in a timely manner. So please make sure to reach out to either one of us or the HR person for that particular bulletin. And that actually reminds me that our bulletins after the 10-day posting period, they are pulled down, meaning that if you go to search for them after the fact, they wouldn't be available online. So you would just want to make sure that when you're applying for the job that you write down or, you know, copy and paste onto a document the person's contact information so that you have that to refer back to in the future.
And there was a follow-up to the question about how do you know if there was somebody hired or interviewed. So basically the question is, I've applied for 3 state jobs over the past 2 weeks. However, the details of the submission aren't provided. Instead, you have to self-track the application. And she's asking if this, or he, I don't know, if this is correct. And this is correct right now. Our applicant tracking system doesn't tell the applicant that it has moved from this stage to this stage to that stage. There's many reasons why it's not used. We didn't push that out to the applicant. Part of that is there's not really a login for you to do. Like, you don't have to create a profile on our applicant tracking system. You just apply for jobs. So there's not any way for it to, it doesn't have a way for it to communicate back to you unless you were to create a profile. With that said, we are working on a brand new system. And when our new system is launched, that system will give you information about what stage your application is in. We are turning that feature on for this newer system. We don't have a date for when that system will be launched just yet, but it is a much more robust system than what we're using now. The Recruiter Box system that we're using was implemented and intended to be a stopgap measure. So it was intended to be short term. The other question, do state of Maine jobs include probationary period for newly hired employees? And that's a very good question. And the answer is yes. All of our jobs have at least 6 months. Some of them do have longer. Managers can also have the option of extending probation. They have to work with HR to do that, but that is definitely something that we have. So think of this is actually what we coach our managers on. When we're teaching managers how to go through the interview process and hire, we say that the probationary period is actually part of the interview process, because this is the time that our managers get to try you out and see if you are really a good fit. And the thing is, I think that, and we touched on this a little bit earlier, being a good fit in a job is incredibly important. And I don't think people give it enough, I don't think that we give it enough attention. I think that we need to make sure that there are, that you're a good fit, that you mix well with the team that you're working with, as well as your manager, and that you like the work. We spend so much time working. Make sure you like your job. I've never stayed in a job that I didn't like. So I think that it's really important.
That's a good point, Karen. And just to piggyback on that a little bit, the interview is a chance for the hiring team to see if you would be a good fit. It's as Karen was alluding to, it's a great opportunity for you to come with questions that you may have that will help you determine if you're going to like the job. As Karen said, we spend a lot of time at work. And so you want to make sure that if you have specific questions about the organization, the department, the company that you're applying to, that you go with those questions and that they're answered in a manner that's going to work for you. So you're interviewing them as much as we're interviewing you.
Oh, absolutely. I 100% agree with that. Another question, do any state positions require testing to be placed on the hiring register? And that's a really good question. There's some history there. Right now, the answer is no. There's not a test per se that that would place you on a hiring register. Now, with some of our law enforcement jobs, you do have to go through a much more rigorous interview process. So if you meet the minimum qualifications and you move to the next stage, something like our game wardens, for instance, you will have interviews with a board of people. You will have swim tests, you will have written tests, you will have a polygraph, you'll have all of these different kinds of things that you'll have to go through in order to get to the next level. But that's not true of most of our other jobs. Our regular we call them non-sworn jobs, you do not have, we do not have testing. There was testing once upon a time. Actually, when I first started with the Bureau 13 years ago, almost 13 years ago, we still did some testing. We had people literally come in, sit down with a little book and answer questions, and then we scored them and tested them. Now that was very short-lived when I was hired. We started really moving into a more modern approach to recruiting, but there was absolutely a time when we tested everybody to come into state government. Great question.
That's a good question. I wanted to make sure I wanted to announce there will be another session on resume writing for veterans. It's going to be Wednesday, September 30th from 10 to 11. And then there is a do's and don'ts of interviewing. So these things will take a little bit of what we've talked about today and expand on them even more. They'll be hosted by different folks. And the do's and don'ts of interviewing will be 11:15 to 12:15, also on September 30th. So if you are interested in learning more about resume writing, interviewing, those are going to be deeper dives into some of the topics touched on today.
And we just had another question come in. Are there part-time or temporary positions available? And that's a great question. The answer is yes, there are. When you look at our job bulletins, they do indicate on the job bulletin that they are temporary or part-time. A lot of times our agency HR folks will actually put that in the job title, that it's part-time or temporary. So look for that. But I can't say that they're all like that. When we have our new system, we will actually you'll be able to search for part-time or temporary jobs. The Agriculture, Conservation, and Forestry Department, they have a lot of seasonal work in their parks, which is really great work. I would have loved to have been outside all summer. That would have been nice. So they definitely do. They didn't generally hire for those beginning in like March or April. It may have been a little later this year due to COVID, but they hire for summer jobs. So DOT, I know, has seasonal crew that does plowing, and that is a seasonal job. There are part-time jobs from time to time. I don't see as many of those as I do temporary type positions or project positions. That's another thing. You also might see a temporary job called project, like a project position, and we do hire for a lot of those. And Jess, why don't you talk a little bit about, I know we're running out of time, but a little bit about some of our project positions that are through OIT, because they're hired through an outside agency, correct?
Yes, so our Office of Information Technology, which is kind of central IT jobs for the entire state of Maine, or executive branch of the state of Maine, they will often hire through a vendor. So it's a staffing agency essentially. So in addition to, there's state of Maine jobs where you apply and you're, whether it's a full-time, part-time, or seasonal position, you work for the state of Maine. There's also project positions through our IT department that you would actually be a contractor through a staffing agency. And those are advertised, those are not advertised on our career page. Those would be advertised like you would find on Indeed. If you typed in, if you Googled, for example, state of Maine contract positions or IT positions, they do pop up there. There's a project right now. If you were to type in state of Maine workday, for example, that's a particular IT project, and those are advertised on Indeed and some of the larger online job boards. And so those positions you would apply for separately. That's a different application process than what we've been talking about today.
But it does give you exposure to state work. So
it does, and it actually can, you know, it can turn into, you know, learning about, you know, some of the language we use in state government, meeting people, and then you might be interested in applying for a permanent position. So
yep.
That's a good point, Karen. Wonderful. Well, we are
out of time.
1 minute, 1 minute before our time. I wanted to thank everybody today. Please don't hesitate to reach out to us. You can call or email us with any follow-up questions. We'd be happy to help. And yeah, thank you for taking the time with us this morning.
Yes, thank you.
Thank you.
Everyone have a great day.